Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to talk about service containers with 4 real practical examples and most practical use cases. After this video, you won't have any confusion regarding service container and where to use it, how it is working. So let's get started. First, service container helps us with dependency injection. Dependency injection is nothing but just fancy way of saying that injecting class via constructor in any class, and it also helps us manage dependencies inject in different way, which we'll see in a moment with example. Now let's go into code and see one basic example. Let me generate so let's generate a controller. Let me make this resourceful controller, and if we go into newly generated controller, you will see that you have this class like this. So this is example of dependency injection. You can inject any class via function or from constructor. Let's make a constructor, and let's say we want some class like some service that we have like this. So this is example of dependency injection. How it is working, we are saying that whenever someone uses this controller, which is most likely via route, we are telling Laravel that whenever we call any of these method from route, we need to have this class available to us. We don't need to inject this class anywhere. So in normal PHP class, if you have to instantiate this, you need to pass this whenever you make new object from the order controller class. But in case of Laravel, what happens is we usually use those route via like this. We use those routes like this, and now this will call the index method in order controller, but we are not passing this anywhere in this route. All right, so how is that getting passed? Via Laravel service container. So service container already works behind the scenes in many places, whether it is in controller, whether it is in queue jobs, wherever you see these kind of classes injected, the service container is injecting all these class without you having to explicitly mention these classes. All right, so that is the default most basic use of service container. So generally, if the class is heavily dependent on any of services, then it is good to inject this way. So that is one way which works by default. So another use case is when you are working with interfaces. So Laravel cannot guess which implementation to use. Let's say you have an interface. So most basic example is payment. Alright, so let's say we have payment interface with pay method, and then we have two services that implement interface. All right, so these two implement this interface. We are using this payment interface in one of our controller or anywhere in any classes, and we are injecting like this somewhere. Let's say we are injecting that payment interface, okay, like this. So we are using payment interface, and we have these two implementation. And in this controller, if someone calls this index method or any method that makes sense, for example pay or make payment, you got the idea. Laravel have no way to know which actual service to use here, which actual service out of these two to use here. because it have no idea like which service to use. So in that case, we need to tell service container whenever someone wants this interface, inject this actual class. How do we do that? From app service provider or any service provider. All right. So we register our bindings in register method of service provider. So in this case, how will we tell this? This app bind payment interface with Stripe payment class. So in this case, we have none of these classes created. So if we bind this, and in controller, whenever we call pay method, then we'll execute the pay from Stripe payment class. All right. Similarly, if you have multiple interfaces like other interfaces that you want to bind, you will do like this. So this is simplest form of binding. So there is shorthand to bind these. You can simply do this manually, or you can define the bindings property and bind like these, the shortest way. And this is manual way. If you need to pass other dependencies whenever you want to instantiate that class, you can do like this. So second one is complex constructor requirement. So what does this mean? Let's again go here. Let's say you need weather API. For this, let's say you are using one weather API, and here you passing some config weather API keys and other information, and you are constructing weather API client like this, and then you are using this somewhere, like let's say like this, and here you are using this weather API client. To get the weather. Let's say you will need this in other places as well, not just in this controller or this service. You will need in other service classes. Your application is very big. You keep instantiating this in several places. So what will happen is, in most of the weather APIs, if you instantiate new class, then they have to construct your client and initialize all the weather data. Some intensive work will be done behind the scenes whenever you instantiate this class. In that case, what you can do is you just go to provider, and here you just bind this weather API like this. Instead of doing this on all classes, you can do like this. What this will do is you don't have to pass in these config variable everywhere in wherever you need. So this is just one example. Here is only one. There might be several other config variables that you might need to pass API URL, different thing, and doing this everywhere, or even creating one helper method to do this is not that good. Instead, what you can do like this, all the parameter here, and then you just need to inject this weather API class, and that's it. So what you need to do is, now you have this flexibility, just this. You don't need this as well. Constructor property permission like this, and you can simply use this client. Much cleaner, right? Instead of calling one helper method or other thing. So what further you can do is, instead of bind, you can use Singleton. So in Singleton, what we'll do is like this. So if in whole application we only need one instance of this API, we don't need to create several instances to get the weather, then this makes sense. So in case of weather API, it makes sense because you are just initializing weather client, and in overall your application you just need some weather data, right? So you don't need to instantiate class in several places. Only one weather instance will work for whole the application level in all parts of the system. So doing Singleton is good idea, and you don't have to change anywhere in any classes where you implement or use this weather API class. You use this class, you bind singleton here and you get this instance of class or whatever you want to do here. Even you can inject some other classes if that class need something. So this is the most practical example that you might need in your application. Third example, which is third-party integration. So we use several packages to make our development easier in day-to-day work, and those packages give us some interface. We use their interfaces and use the functionality given by them. All right, let's suppose your application, you have some specific need. In that case, you cannot go and edit your package code from your vendor directory, or if you ask the creator of those packages to make those changes, it might take some time. If you submit pull requests to pass those changes, it will also take time, or you don't know whether it will be get merged or not. So what we'll do, what is a good solution in that case? If we want our own implementation for that particular interface that the package is providing, then we can override that interface. Let's say this interface is not in our base. This is from some packages. Let's say Specie interface. They give that package to us, and we have payment functionality in our application. Let's suppose this is the payment package. Now, if we need other classes, other payment provider that that package doesn't provide, then what we'll do? We defined our custom payment provider. We create our class. Let's say PHP artisan make class custom payment service. There we go, and we use that custom payment service here, and in custom payment service we implement payment interface and whatever application, whatever function we have in this interface, we implement that. All right, and this is just one example. In existing package there might be several methods. You want to override some method, then you define that method that you want to override here and override the functionality, and you just go to your service provider and bind the package interface with your interface. Your custom interface with the functionality that you want in your application. So this is most useful case. Now whenever you use this interface, you will have your own functionality, not from the packages. You can override some part of the functionality from the package. Finally, conditional logic. So what I mean by conditional logic is, if you go to service container, we can bind let's say in API controller. Okay, let me paste a new use case here. So this is example of conditional binding. Let's say in admin controller, you need, if someone needs in this controller, if you need logger interface, then you give database logger class, and if in API you need same interface, then you get file logger. Let's say you want to use different logging service or different any kind of service. This is just example. If you need different concrete class in different controller, whether it can be admin or API or any other thing, then you can adjust this. So by this, what you'll get custom payment provider for everywhere you use. With this, what is changed, in admin controller you can inject this, in API controller you can inject this. So depending on the context, you give them some other concrete classes. So this just not only holds for controller or any classes, in any classes or anywhere you, so even in local or test environment, you can use different implementation. Let's say you are doing tests, running tests locally, and you don't want to call these weather APIs and other thing, and then it is expensive, right, to make call to some expensive service during test run. Then you can easily change implementation for test setup, specifically for only for test setups. So here is an example how you can easily do that. You can wrap like this. You can also wrap this into only bind this in production, but else it can be test or anything. You can bind this with some other dummy weather API. All right, like this. So this is another very frequent use case you can use for this, or let me revert. You can also do same if else here as well. So it can be anything, whether it is for environment, whether you are using some feature flags. So it can be other use case. Let's say you want advanced search. If this feature flag is enabled, then you give Elasticsearch, otherwise simple database search. So there are several use cases. You can just change in service provider, and throughout your application everything changes. You don't have to go to each and every controller or every services to change everything whenever something got changed. So hope you like this video. This is I hope this will be very helpful to you to write maintainable code. Very helpful to write maintainable code this way. I will see you on another video. Bye.